For decades, human beings were taught to believe that they were prisoners of their own biology, that their DNA was a rigid, immutable script that dictated the quality of their health, the length of their life, and the circumstances they would face. We were told that if our parents or grandparents suffered from certain conditions, then those same conditions were written into our fate, waiting for the right moment to surface. That old narrative created a culture of helplessness, a story in which people surrendered their power to the idea that their genes were fixed, unchangeable, and unresponsive to the choices they made in their daily lives. But the new frontier of science has been quietly rewriting this story. The discoveries of epigenetics have shattered the myth of genetic determinism and revealed a new truth: genes are not our destiny. Genes are possibilities, potentials waiting to be awakened or silenced, depending on the signals they receive from the environment. The most astonishing revelation is that the environment influencing our genetic expression is not limited to the world outside of us. The internal environment, the thoughts we think, the emotions we feel, the beliefs we sustain, creates chemical signals that speak directly to our DNA. Every thought in the brain produces a neurochemical, and every emotion felt in the body floods our cells with molecules of information. Those molecules act as messengers, telling our genes whether to express health, resilience, and growth, or to express stress, inflammation, and disease. This means that consciousness itself is not an abstract force, but a biological influence capable of shaping the very expression of life within us. When a person is caught in cycles of stress, fear, or worry, the brain continually produces the same patterns of chemicals that keep the body in survival mode. In this state, the genetic code receives instructions to prepare for danger. Energy is diverted from growth and repair, inflammation increases, and the body remains locked in vigilance. Over time, those signals program the body into imbalance and dysfunction, and the person begins to believe they are defined by their diagnosis or their history. Yet when a person learns to change their internal state, when they shift their thoughts from the past or future into the present moment and begin to feel elevated emotions like gratitude, joy, and love, the chemistry of their body changes. The signals to their genes shift. Instead of expressing survival, the genes begin to express creation, balance, and healing. This is the essence of the biology of belief. It teaches us that the thoughts and emotions we consistently embody are the instructions that program our genetic code. If a thought is a signal and an emotion is a chemical instruction, then by sustaining new patterns of thinking and feeling, we can literally write a new biological story. This is not a metaphor. It is a process that can be observed in real time through changes in gene expression, shifts in immune system function, and the regeneration of neural circuits in the brain. Ordinary people all over the world are proving this with extraordinary outcomes. When they enter states of deep meditation, aligning thought with intention and intention with elevated emotion, they create coherence between brain and heart. That coherence generates a harmonious signal that communicates with the body on a cellular level, instructing it to operate as if the future they are imagining is already real. The body does not know the difference between an actual event in the external world and an internally generated experience that is vividly imagined and deeply felt. If someone consistently rehearses a new state of being, if they live each day embodying the gratitude of already being healed, or the joy of already living in abundance, or the love of already being connected, then the body begins to biologically adapt to that future experience in the present moment. The genetic code responds as if the imagined future is already here, and new programs of health, vitality, and growth begin to unfold. This is the power of consciousness as the architect of biology. No longer are we passive observers of our fate. We are active participants, constantly influencing the genetic symphony that determines the quality of our lives. To understand this is to reclaim power over the most intimate level of our existence. It means that every thought, every emotion, every choice is more than just an invisible ripple. It is a biological instruction shaping who we are becoming. It means that the script written in our DNA is not final, but open, waiting for us to decide which version of ourselves we wish to express. And it means that belief is not a fleeting idea, but a force capable of rewriting the very code of life. When most people wake up in the morning, they immediately begin to relive the same thoughts as the day before. They think about their problems, their to-do lists, their challenges, and without even realizing it, they begin to feel the same emotions those thoughts produce. If yesterday was filled with stress, worry, or frustration, the chemistry of those emotions floods the body once again. The brain fires the same neural patterns, the body memorizes the same states, and the cycle continues. Over time, this repetition teaches the body to live in the past, and the genetic instructions being sent to the cells reflect that past. The body becomes a living record of yesterday's experiences, and the person remains trapped in the same identity, the same biology, and the same destiny. Stress in particular reinforces this loop. When the body perceives constant threats, it prioritizes survival. Energy is rerouted from growth and repair into preparing for fight or flight. Inflammatory genes are switched on, the immune system is compromised, and the chemistry of vigilance dominates. This is why so many people feel like they are victims of their circumstances. The environment outside of them is continuously dictating the signals inside of them, and those signals are programming the same genetic expressions over and over again. It creates the illusion that life is happening to us and that we are powerless to change it. But what if the opposite is true? What if instead of being victims of our biology, we are actually creators of it? The new science of epigenetics demonstrates that while the DNA sequence itself does not change, the expression of those genes is directly influenced by our internal environment, our thoughts, our emotions, and our beliefs. This means that when we learn to change the way we think and feel, we send new chemical signals to our cells. Those signals instruct different genes to switch on or off, leading to new patterns of health, vitality, and growth. Suddenly the narrative changes. We are no longer bound by the past or by inherited programs. We are empowered to become the authors of our future biology. The key lies in moving beyond the habitual states of survival and into elevated states of being. Gratitude, joy, inspiration, compassion, and love are not just pleasant emotions, they are powerful biological signals. When sustained, they broadcast a different message to our DNA. Instead of telling the body to prepare for danger, they tell it to grow, to repair, to expand. The chemistry of elevated emotions creates coherence between the heart and brain, aligning the body into harmony. In this state, the signals that reach the genes promote balance and resilience. The body begins to express a new genetic destiny, one that matches the future we are envisioning instead of the past we are repeating. This is the transition from victim to creator. A victim waits for something outside of them to change before they feel differently. They wait for success before they feel worthy, for healing before they feel whole, for love before they feel joy. But a creator reverses that equation. A creator generates the state of being first, independent of the external environment. They practice feeling gratitude for a future they have not yet experienced. They embody joy as if the success has already occurred. They cultivate love as if the healing is already complete. By living in that elevated state, they send new instructions to their biology. The genes begin to express as if the future has already arrived, and over time, that internal shift draws the external reality to match it. When someone truly understands this, they realize that their power lies not in controlling the outside world, but in mastering their inner world. By breaking the habit of old thoughts and emotions, by choosing coherence instead of chaos, they begin to broadcast a new signal into the field of possibility. The body follows the mind into this new future, and the person literally changes their biology by belief alone. This is not positive thinking. This is not wishful hoping. This is a measurable biological shift in which consciousness instructs matter. The biology of belief invites us to see ourselves as far greater than our past, greater than our environment, and greater than our genetics. It challenges us to stop recycling the same states of being and instead to practice living as if the desired future is already real. In doing so, we discover that we are not defined by the old self, the old emotions, or the old codes written into our cells. We are creators, and the canvas of creation is our own biology. Every moment we sustain an elevated state, we are teaching our body a new language, sending our genes a new message, and stepping into a future that was once only imagined. A thought is not invisible, abstract, or without consequence. Every thought is a signal, carrying energy and information that has the power to shape the chemistry of the body. When someone thinks the same thought repeatedly, that thought produces the same neurochemical response, and that response begins to create a familiar pattern in the brain. Over time, the repetition of those patterns forms a habit of thinking, and that habit becomes a state of being. What most people don't realize is that those repeated thoughts are not just shaping their mental experience. They are sending molecular instructions to their cells, influencing the very expression of their genetic code. The body is listening to the brain in every moment. Each time the brain produces a thought, the chemistry of that thought cascades into the bloodstream, carrying signals that interact with receptors on the surface of the cells. Those interactions are what tell the genes inside the cell to either activate or silence. If the thought is one of fear, worry, or doubt, then the body begins to express stress-related genes, genes that prepare the body to survive at all costs. In this state, growth and repair are suppressed, the immune system weakens, and the body shifts into imbalance. If the thought is repeated over and over, then those stress-related genes remain switched on, and the biology begins to reflect the inner state of fear. Now imagine what happens when the thought is aligned with intention and combined with elevated emotion. A thought of possibility paired with the emotion of gratitude creates a signal very different from one of survival. That signal broadcasts coherence through the body, and the genes that promote healing, balance, and regeneration begin to activate. In other words, the combination of thought, intention, and emotion becomes a biological command that rewrites the internal script. When someone learns to sustain that state, when they no longer simply think the thought but feel it so fully that their body believes the future they are imagining is already real, they are literally programming their genetic expression in the direction of their vision. The body does not know the difference between an experience in the outer world and one vividly imagined in the inner world. If a person continually rehearses a thought and couples it with the corresponding emotion, the body accepts it as reality. This is how people become addicted to stress. They keep thinking the same negative thoughts, producing the same negative emotions, and over time the body learns to crave those chemicals, locking the person into an identity shaped by the past. But the same principle can be used to create healing and transformation. By repeatedly thinking empowering thoughts and generating elevated emotions, the body begins to believe in a new future. The genetic expression shifts, the neural circuitry rewires, and the person begins to embody a new identity that matches the future they are envisioning. This is why meditation and practices of intentional focus are so powerful. When the mind becomes quiet and attention is freed from the distractions of the external world, a person can begin to place their awareness on the inner world. In that space, thoughts can be directed with intention and emotions can be elevated deliberately rather than unconsciously repeating the chemistry of the past. Each time someone practices this alignment, they are training the brain and body to move from survival into creation. The more they repeat the practice, the more familiar it becomes, and soon the new state of being is no longer an effort, but a natural expression. When a thought becomes an intention, and that intention is experienced with elevated emotion, coherence is created between brain and heart. This coherence generates a harmonious signal that not only influences the genetic code, but radiates outward into the electromagnetic field around the body. In that state of coherence, the person is no longer waiting for the environment to change before they feel different. They are generating the state first, broadcasting a signal that invites the environment to reorganize around their new biology. Ordinary people doing this consistently have experienced extraordinary outcomes. Remissions, breakthroughs, and transformations that traditional science would have once dismissed as impossible. The key is understanding that this is not about a single thought or a fleeting feeling. It is about sustained states of being. A thought without an emotion has little power, and an emotion without direction remains random. But when thought and emotion are joined in alignment, they create a biological signature so coherent that it instructs the genes to express in entirely new ways. This is the true meaning of the biology of belief, to recognize that belief itself is a sustained pattern of thought and emotion that programs the body to become what the mind envisions. Each time someone chooses a new thought, aligns it with intention, and feels it deeply enough that the body experiences it as real, they are no longer simply imagining change. They are creating it at the genetic level. Many people live under the weight of their history, believing that because their parents or grandparents suffered from a certain illness, they too are destined to experience it. Others feel trapped by the traumas they endured, convinced that the past has left an indelible mark on their identity and their future. This belief in genetic and emotional determinism creates a life where possibility is stifled by predictability. The body continues to relive the same chemical states that were once generated by painful experiences, and those states send signals to the genes to keep expressing the same biological programs. The story becomes one of repetition, the same emotions, the same reactions, the same outcomes, all reinforcing the illusion that the past is inescapable. What science now reveals is that the genes themselves do not determine destiny. They are potentials like keys on a piano waiting to be played. Which notes are struck depends not only on the external environment, but on the internal environment generated by our thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. If a person continually relives old memories and sustains the emotions of anger, guilt, fear, or sadness, then the body is constantly instructed to replay the same genetic sequences associated with stress and survival. In this way, the body becomes a living archive of the past, replaying yesterday's experiences as today's reality. Yet the very same mechanism that keeps the past alive can also be used to liberate us from it. The moment a person chooses to interrupt the cycle, to stop repeating the old thoughts and emotions, they open the door to a new possibility. By stepping into the present moment and consciously generating new states of being. Gratitude instead of resentment, love instead of fear, joy instead of sorrow, the chemistry of the body begins to change. These elevated emotions produce new molecular signals that inform the genes to express differently. In essence, the genetic code receives new instructions that are no longer tied to the pain of the past, but aligned with the potential of the future. This process is not theoretical, it is observable in real biological changes. Studies show that meditation, mindfulness, and intentional emotional regulation can upregulate genes associated with immunity and healing while downregulating those linked to inflammation and disease. What this means is that the body can literally reprogram itself when the mind stops repeating the story of the past and begins to live in the energy of the future. Instead of carrying trauma as a permanent scar in the body, one can begin to write new instructions that allow the body to heal, regenerate, and grow. The key lies in understanding that the past exists primarily as a set of memories stored in the brain and emotions stored in the body. When those memories are replayed repeatedly, the body believes it is reliving the event, and the stress chemistry is activated again and again. This keeps old wounds alive and reinforces the same genetic patterns. To break free, one must stop signaling the genes with the chemistry of old emotions and begin to send signals of coherence and balance. Each time a person practices elevated states, they teach the body to feel safe in the present moment. In that safety, the genes begin to express in new ways, and the past loosens its grip. Consider the transformation that occurs when someone who has lived in fear for years begins to practice gratitude daily. At first, it may feel unnatural because the body is addicted to the familiar chemistry of fear. But with consistent practice, the elevated emotion of gratitude begins to produce a new baseline of chemistry. This instructs the genes to express in ways that strengthen immunity, enhance repair, and promote balance. Over time, the body no longer reflects the history of fear, but the present reality of gratitude. The genetic code, once dominated by survival, becomes a blueprint for growth. Breaking the chains of the past is not about denying what happened or pretending it did not matter. It is about refusing to let those experiences dictate the present state of being. When someone realizes they can generate emotions independent of their history, they reclaim authorship of their biology. They stop waiting for something external to change how they feel and instead begin to create a new internal environment that changes everything. The past is no longer the driver of destiny. Consciousness becomes the programmer of a new genetic future. What emerges is a profound truth. You are not defined by your family tree, your trauma, or your diagnosis. You are defined by the signals you send to your genes in this very moment. The biology of belief shows that the script is always open, always waiting for new instructions. By choosing elevated states of being, you step out of the predictable past and into the unknown future, where new possibilities for health, freedom, and transformation are waiting to be expressed. The human body is not a collection of isolated parts operating independently, but a living system of communication, coherence, and intelligence. At the center of this system is the connection between the heart and the brain. For years, science regarded the heart as nothing more than a pump, a mechanical organ moving blood through the body. Yet new research has revealed that the heart has its own nervous system, its own capacity to send powerful signals to the brain, and its own electromagnetic field that can extend far beyond the body. The quality of communication between the heart and brain shapes not only our mental and emotional states, but also the expression of our genetic code. When someone lives in stress, fear, or anger, the signals sent from the heart to the brain are incoherent, chaotic, and disorganized. That incoherence disrupts the communication between systems and creates imbalance in the body. The stress chemistry that results from this incoherence instructs the genes to express in ways that suppress growth, compromise immunity, and promote disease. This is the familiar cycle many people live in without realizing it. Stressful thoughts produce incoherent heart rhythms, incoherence reinforces survival emotions, and survival emotions keep the body in a constant state of vigilance. Over time, The repetition of this pattern writes imbalance into the genetic code, creating a biology that mirrors the disharmony of the inner state. But when someone shifts into elevated emotions such as gratitude, compassion, joy, or love, the heart's rhythms change dramatically. They become coherent, rhythmic, and ordered. This state of heart coherence sends harmonious signals to the brain, aligning its neural activity and bringing balance to the nervous system. The result is not only a greater sense of calm and clarity in the moment, but also a profound biological shift. The chemistry of elevated emotions instructs the genes to express in ways that enhance growth, repair, and resilience. In this state, genes associated with health and balance are activated, while those tied to inflammation and stress are downregulated. This coherence between the heart and brain generates a powerful electromagnetic field that can be measured outside the body. That field is not only a broadcast of the person's internal state, but also a signal that can influence the environment around them. When someone sustains coherence, they are literally radiating an energy of harmony into the space they occupy. The body, meanwhile, begins to biologically adapt to this new signature, aligning its genetic expression with the frequency of the elevated emotions. In this way, a person can tune their entire biology to the energy of their desired future. The implications of this are profound. It means that we do not have to wait for external circumstances to change before we feel better. We do not need to wait for healing before we feel gratitude or for success before we feel joy. By choosing to cultivate these elevated states first, we send new instructions to our genes that prepare the body for the very future we are envisioning. The biology of belief is not simply about changing thoughts, but about creating new states of being where thought and emotion merge into coherence. The body, receiving those signals, cannot tell the difference between an experience that has already happened and one that is being vividly imagined and deeply felt. It begins to adapt as though the future is already real. This is why practices such as meditation, breathwork, and heart-focused awareness are so transformative. They allow people to break the cycles of incoherence and enter states where the heart and brain are aligned. Each time coherence is generated, the body learns what that harmony feels like, and the more it is practiced, the easier it becomes to sustain. Over time, the baseline shifts, and what was once an unfamiliar elevated state becomes the new normal. The genetic expression adjusts accordingly, reinforcing the state of health, balance, and vitality. When we understand that the heart is more than a pump and the brain is more than a processor, we begin to see ourselves as far more powerful than we were taught. We realize that coherence is not a fleeting moment of peace, but a biological instruction that reshapes who we are at the most fundamental level. By living in gratitude, love, and joy, not as reactions to life, but as choices made in the present moment, we harness the ability to tune our genes to the frequency of our future. The body becomes the instrument of creation, playing a melody that matches the energy of possibility rather than the discord of the past. This is the essence of the heart-brain connection, a living, dynamic system that allows us to step beyond survival into harmony and into the biology of belief, where new realities are not only imagined but embodied. Think of your DNA as a vast library of potential, a set of instructions that contains countless possibilities for how your body can function, repair, and evolve. For most of human history, people believed those instructions were fixed, that their genetic code was their destiny, written once and for all by inheritance. But what the emerging science of epigenetics reveals is that the genes themselves are not the ultimate authority. They are like dormant programs on a computer, waiting for the right command to determine whether they will be activated or silenced. What issues the command is the environment, and the most immediate environment your cells respond to is not only the external world, but the inner world of your thoughts, your emotions, and your consciousness. If DNA is the hardware and the cellular environment is the operating system, then consciousness is the programmer. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every belief you sustain is a form of code, a signal that communicates with your cells and instructs your genes. Most people are running programs without realizing it. They wake up and immediately replay the worries of yesterday, the stress of their responsibilities, or the memories of their past. Each of those familiar thoughts produces familiar emotions, and those emotions become the signals that program the body to express the same genetic patterns as the day before. This repetition keeps the same biology alive, locking the person into a predictable future that looks a lot like the past. The beauty of this discovery is that the code can be rewritten. If thoughts and emotions create the signals that influence genetic expression, then changing the pattern of thoughts and emotions changes the code. When someone chooses to think differently, when they generate elevated emotions such as gratitude, love, or joy, they are sending entirely new instructions to their DNA. Genes associated with healing, growth, and repair are activated, while those tied to stress and disease are silenced. Over time, the body begins to embody a new script, one that reflects the intentional states of consciousness rather than the unconscious programs of the past. The difference between running old programs and installing new ones lies in awareness. The unconscious mind, fueled by repetition, keeps the body stuck in automatic habits. But when you become aware of your thoughts and emotions, when you step into the role of observer and creator, you gain the power to choose. You can stop running the code of fear, stress, and doubt, and instead install the code of possibility, coherence, and wholeness. Meditation, intentional focus, and practices of presence all serve as tools for this reprogramming. They take attention away from the external world, break the cycles of automatic thinking, and open space for new instructions to be written. In these moments, the body does not know the difference between an experience that has already happened and one that is vividly imagined and deeply felt. If you imagine your future with enough clarity and embody the emotions of that future in the present moment, your body begins to believe it is already living it. The cells respond to the chemistry of that state, and the genes begin to express accordingly. This is how belief itself becomes biology. It is not about wishful thinking or blind optimism. It is about consciously choosing a state of being and sustaining it long enough for the body to adapt to it. As you practice this consistently, the new program becomes more familiar than the old one. The brain rewires its neural circuits, the body adapts to new emotional signatures, and the genetic expression shifts to reflect the elevated states of consciousness. What was once a possibility becomes a biological reality. You are no longer living as a product of the past, but as a creator of the future. This shift reveals a truth that redefines human potential. You are not limited by your genes, your environment, or your history. You are only limited by the code you continue to run. The biology of belief shows that the code is never final. It is always open, always waiting for new instructions. By choosing awareness over autopilot, coherence over chaos, and creation over survival, you step into the role of the programmer. You realize that you are greater than your body, greater than your environment, and greater than time itself. In that realization, the script of your life is no longer a repetition of the old story, but a living expression of the future you choose to create.